Welcome to the Deconstructed Woman podcast, a podcast about breaking down barriers between women, exploring and sharing perspectives of each individual woman's experience, and discovering what we have in common and what makes us different. Hosted by Elisa and Jojy. Welcome back to the Deconstructed Woman podcast. So today, Jojy and I wanted to sit down and talk about a recent article she read in which Scarlett Johansson said, and I'm not going to give an exact quote, but essentially that work-life balance is a fantasy, and that even no matter, the kind of work that you do, that is a very, very difficult goal to achieve, to really have that balance. And so as we started talking about this, Jojy and I, a couple of thoughts came to mind right away. For me, I very much try to keep work and my personal life separate, but I think that there's still overlaps. There's definitely times where, work stress seeps into personal home stress, if you will. And so we wanted to kind of have this discussion about what does that look like? How does that impact women? And how, I don't know that we necessarily have the answer to how to balance that, but definitely some ideas for that. So Jojy, let's kind of dive into what you read in the article and what were some of your first impressions?
Just to cite the article, it's from Fortune magazine, and it is from May 18th, 2026, so pretty recently. And the article is talking, I guess the byline is, despite having 165 million net worth, Scarlett Johansson says work-life balance doesn't exist. And the first step to success is admitting that. And so it caught my eye because she's a very wealthy woman, and she's part of a celebrity couple who are famous. And I think there's an assumption that if you have that kind of money, that this is not one of your problems, right? Work-life balance and trying to achieve that should be easy to do because you can afford to have all the childcare you want or nannies. But then I think the crux of the issue is that if you want to be there for your children, then regardless of if you're a celebrity and you have that much money, or you are a working mom who is struggling to make ends meet, or anybody in between, then that work-life balance and the myth of that is really, really challenging because you want to have it all, but the reality is, and I think we've talked about this before, that it's impossible to have. And so my story is that I talked a good line about work-life balance, but I didn't ever expect to have it, nor, if I'm being honest, did I actually want to have it. I really loved working, and I had a lot of my self-image tied to that. And for me, it was almost like I believe deeply that working made me a better mother because it forced me to be present when I was at home. But that didn't necessarily mean that I had boundaries to come home at 5:00 when my hours were done. I typically always work 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. And that doesn't include anything I did after I got home or, after my daughter was put to bed or whatever. So, it was a very weird rationalization of what I expected my life to be. And if I'm being completely honest, I almost feel like my family life interfered with my career. And I've come a long way from that time, but to be fully honest, my career was very, very important to me. And it really skewed my impression of what was important and what I was trying to accomplish. And I think that now I have insight about what drove me in that way, and there was nothing healthy about that. It was about keeping up with the Joneses or proving my worth and, all that kind of stuff. Not anything to do with anything good, I believe, but it's taken me a long time to get there, to realize that.
I think for me, it's It's been a little bit different, but, like, I definitely understand what you're saying. For me, I really didn't like I always kid because my 4-year-old is very much like, says, "I'm gonna have a big family and get married," and, like, she's kind of planning out, like, her wedding and things like that, and I'm like, "I never did that." I never kind of had an image or a fantasy of, like, what my life would be like. I kinda just, take one step in front of the other, and for me, for the longest time, I anticipated that I was gonna go into the FBI, like, that was my goal, and that really wasn't probably conducive to having, like, a family life or, like, my I was gonna be full-fledged into work and throw my whole kind of self into it. But then life had a very different course, than that. I think it was about I always tell people, like, my 35th birthday was a very turning point for me because that's, like, the age that you can apply to the FBI, and after you're 35, because there's an age cutoff. And so for me, then it was really pivoting to, okay, I am going to have a family life and have this work life balance. And I'm going to try to seek out um, a place or agency where that is possible. And so, I kind of moved from one job to the one that I have now. And that was part of our discussion at the time of my interview was just like the idea of work life balance. Because I was before that working 60, 70 hours before I had my first child. And then as soon as I had her, I realized like I cannot sustain this. It's just not possible for me to want to have, the career that I thought I was on the trajectory for and to have a family life. And so I left that job and came to the one that I'm currently in. And I've been able to create that work life balance in some ways. So sometimes the stress from work seeps in, and it stays with me and it's very heavy and it's like, oh, I really have to get this report done. Or I have this big meeting in the morning. And so I find myself being a little bit more challenged in trying to be more present at home. But I also have had to set very clear boundaries of this is what I need. This is, when I get into work, I focus in on what I need to do, and when I leave at 5 o'clock, like I'm leaving it there. And so that's not something that I accomplished overnight by any means. It's something that I kind of like worked towards over time, but it was really, really challenging to be able to still have a career and still have life. So the work piece, has kind of been solidified. And so, I think this comes up a lot of times for like vacations. How do people approach vacations? Because, I have an upcoming vacation and my plan is to do as much work as I can between now and then leave my work phone, leave my work computer at work and not take it with me. And this is probably the first time ever for me because I've always taken work with me. Because it's like, well, I'm just, hanging out. Like I might as well get a little bit of work done. So I think that it's a process. And I think that there's a lot that goes into it. Do I think it's a fantasy? I don't know. I think I do a pretty good job of being able to balance it. But I also think that, again, that came from a conscious decision to say, I'm going to leave this here and not let it come into my personal life as much as I can.
Definitely think that it is a decision that each individual has to make. I do think that the type of work you do also makes it either easier or more difficult. There were many a time where I thought to myself, oh, this person doesn't have the job that is going to carry over after hours. Like if you have a very specific kind of job and, you're responsible, nothing spills over, then I feel like that would be easier. But as I've mentioned before on this podcast, my husband has said to me numerous times, it doesn't matter what kind of job you had. I think you would bring it home because you enjoy it so much. And he is an individual who really feels like, he owes his company 8 hours of work. He's going to do that to the best of his ability. He's going to give 125% while he's there. But once that's done, now nobody has any say so over his time but himself. And so he does that with a lot of confidence and calmness and assertiveness. And that's the way he's always lived his life. I, on the other hand, almost thrive on interference in my personal life. And I'm getting better with it now, probably just because I'm getting tired and I'm older and I need that break. Whereas, before I could, just burn the candle at both ends and get up and go to work. But now it just seems like there's definitely more of a concern about burnout and it takes me longer to recover. And if I am not ready for the work week, it just seems like I've worked, you know, 12 days in a row because the weekend didn't help me reset. And so I think it's very, very different. But I know that there's a lot of truth in what my husband is saying. And I'm not saying it like I'm proud of it or like I am this martyr, like, oh, I'm so dedicated. I think it's a negative. I feel like I truly believe and accept, and it resonates with me 100% that when I die, my work life is not going to be represented on my tombstone, right? I know that. I know that the things that I want to be remembered for today have very little to do with my work and so much more as me as a person. And I don't feel like I have allowed myself to invest as much in that area as I have my actual career or my work. So I think that I definitely see the downside of the decisions that I've made. And I'm trying to, I'm a recovering workaholic at this point.
I love that. I mean, I think I had like more questions than, thoughts. Because I'm curious. So kind of going a little bit deeper on that. Like, what do you think kind of made you want to kind of, I mean, I know you said you enjoyed the work, but like kind of bring it into home life. Like, was it, what do you think was the catalyst for that? I guess is my question of like, how did you feel like this is how I want to do it versus saying, I'm going to set these boundaries. I'm not going to bring it in that I don't want to.
I believe that it was because I had a very specific goal in mind. My goal was like your goal, was to be in the FBI. My goal was to be an executive. And so in order to be an executive, I needed to continue climbing that corporate ladder. And in order to do that, in my mind, I had to work harder than anybody else, be more successful, lead teams, lead people. Like I had in my mind this to-do list to be able to achieve what I wanted to. And achieving that meant something to me. Success, not being limited by the fact that I'm a social worker, like I was going to be able to get beyond that. And that was really important to me until it wasn't. And then, at some point, I think I realized that, okay, because I think when I married my husband and his priority was home life, all of a sudden, some of that started changing for me. When I was married to my first husband, he wasn't really interested in having an intimate partnership with me as a woman, as a wife. And so it made my career like a very easy place for me to invest my energy. And so when I decided to leave that marriage, I don't think I understood that wanting to be in a partnership requires me to be present and requires something of me that I didn't have to give before because my partner didn't want that from me. But if I wasn't going to repeat the same mistake that I had made in the past, I needed to change that paradigm. And that was going to require me to, choose a different way to be successful rather than investing in solely my career, because I knew by that time that a company is going to bleed you dry and you're not going to get what you think you're going to get out of that, right? I mean, you're going to have limited fulfillment because that is your job and not your entire self. And so I think it took a lot of learning to get there. But definitely, I believe getting divorced and getting remarried and really knowing what I wanted out of this second marriage required me to renegotiate what some of that involved, for sure.
Yeah, and I think you bring up like so many good points, and because I wasn't sure where it came from, and I appreciate you kind of being vulnerable and talking about like, that your first marriage didn't really require that of you. And so you could throw yourself straight into, work. And I think that very early on for me, I also wanted to, that first job that I was talking about, like 60, 70 hours a week, like I was like, eyes on the prize. I'm going to be like the director of this company someday, or CEO or whatever you call it. And so I think that, that probably resonates for a lot of high achieving women who, are trying to, like you said, climb that workplace ladder. But it is hard to then have to pivot out of that. And I think for me being now in a mid-career space for myself, I've kind of established my reputation. I'm branching out in other areas and doing other things. And that aspiration, not that it's less now, but it's shifted. It's changed for me. Like I'm comfortable where I am. And there's nothing requiring me to kind of move or shift. And so, that's how I'm no longer trying to climb that ladder. But I do think that the other thing, which is why I was asking you, is I think that sometimes people have this instinctual, like wanting to people please, or having a hard time setting boundaries, or different reasons why they can't really make that balance. And again, maybe it's not, I cannot stand here and say that I have a perfect work-life balance. Like I don't think anybody does. So I'm not standing here saying like, oh, if you just set good boundaries, you can have it, you can achieve it. I think that it still bleeds over from time to time. I think that it bleeds over less for me because I've set such clear boundaries. But I also have realized that, similar to what you were saying, like I don't get paid for like working harder. I'm not achieving, and I don't work well when I'm not at work. Like when I'm at work, like I said, I kind of go in fully focused, throw myself into what I'm doing. And then when I come home, I like decompress. But I know that like some people thrive and work better like at home versus, at work. So there's a lot of different ways that this looks. And I guess the moral of what I'm trying to say here is that everybody's different. Everybody has a different kind of path. I think, and everybody's probably in different seasons and stages too. Like I said, I'm in mid-career where I feel pretty established and good, and still working on that balance in some way, shape, or form. And, there's definitely times where I'm sitting next to my 2-year-old's bed with the computer open, writing a report late into the night. It happens. But at the same time, I really want to treat that protected time as protected as I can. And I think that there's a lot of reasons why people don't. But I do think that it comes down to, is the job a good fit? Like, is a different job going to bring that? Like I said, I switched jobs very early on in my career because the other one wasn't a good fit. And I knew it wasn't going to pan out for me. I could not sustain that long term. And it's a decision that was really hard, but one that I felt was necessary.
I think the other thing that contributes to, I think, some of the decisions that I made also have to do with, I was visiting my family last weekend, and my brothers and I carved out some time just to have some sibling time. And one of the things that we talked about was like, both my brothers have been advised to, get on ADHD medications. And, so I've been thinking a lot about that. And one of the things that I don't know, I believe it feeds into this a little bit, but I'm not exactly sure how much, or if it's a rationalization for the outcome. I'm not exactly sure. But I also get very restless when I'm comfortable. And so like, usually in like year 3 or year 4 of a job, when the job is familiar, I've mastered it, I feel like maybe the challenges now are behind me, I get bored. And in that boredom, I start to have to find something to entertain myself, whether that's going back to school, whether that is thinking about like, what we would call today a side hustle. Like, I started a consulting company. I started writing a book. I, started a podcast. And part of the podcast was because I know that this job that I'm currently in is probably going to be the last job of my career. Am I an executive? No, I'm not. Am I a well-respected person in this organization? Yes, I am. Am I very happy with, the decisions I've made, the choices I made? Yeah. But it doesn't stop the fact that I start itching to do something different, to explore something. And these are the parts of me that drive my husband crazy because I can't just be content. He wants me to be content, and I am content, but it doesn't prevent me from wanting to do something different or try something new. And I don't know if that's ADHD. I don't know if that is discontent. I don't know what it is. I thought about it a lot because my husband has challenged me for probably the last 25 years on this idea that I need to constantly be doing something different. And I don't know if you have any insights on that, but it is something that I really struggle with because it's like, why can I not just rest? Like, why can I not just enjoy? Like, why do I feel like I have to figure out something else to do? Because I don't really have the bandwidth necessarily to take on anything more.
Yeah, I mean, it it brings me back to, Human Design with my sister, the podcast we did a couple, and now it feels like a month, but I don't don't know how long ago that was, but, like the manifesting generator, like, I think we had some similarities in our human design, and it makes me think of that because I was actually having this conversation with one of my students the other day, because I was saying, like, I definitely thrive in chaos in in some ways. I do well when I have kind of like things are going, but I also said to her, I do really well, especially like pushing through, adding things, work, I teach, I have 4 kids, I have a podcast, I have different things that kind of give me these different outlets. But I also know when I need to have like downtime and rest and recoup and give myself like a break. And that's kind of integrated into my week. And I have to say, okay, this is my time where I'm going to just not sit on the couch and just read a book and chaos is swirling around me and it's fine. But I do think that some people thrive in that kind of creative um flow of things. And so I get it from that perspective, but I think that so much so, I think that it's also, high achieving women that just keeps coming up for me in this conversation is that, we are pushed to kind of say like more is better. It's like do more, get more done. You have to have your hands in so many pots. And I was joking that like the only thing I don't do is the PTO at school. Like I don't know, it's not me. But I mean like if I found out there was some way or reason that I needed to be part of the PTO to like advocate for my kids, you'd probably see me there. So I think that there is differences in how that comes out, but I do think that we feel at times as if, I need to kind of have this outlet. I need somewhere for this. And I don't have ADHD. I just have this great urge to do much, to do a lot, and have my hand in a lot of pots. And it fulfills me versus, breaks me down or wears me down. But again, that's why the only way for that to happen is for me to have that reset, that recharge every single day, so that I can keep going.
Hmm. The one thing that you made me think about is that, Scarlett Johansson also said in this article that, you can't do everything perfectly. Like some things got to give. You can't be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect, with her business because she started a skincare line and things like that. Like you have to realize, and that's why she says, knowing you can't do everything is the beginning of accepting, what you have in front of you. And I totally get that because there was when I, in my younger self, with my younger self, I wasn't very efficient with my time. Like before I had my daughter, I didn't have a problem working 10, 12 hours a day, but I honestly probably only did like maybe, 8 hours of work, but there were not exactly socialization but a lot of wasted time. Whereas now I feel like I'm so much more efficient and I get a lot of work done in my 8 or 10 hours, but I know that I'm working. Like I'm not making excuses to stay at work longer for whatever reason. I'm a lot more productive and efficient today than I was. But as a student, as an undergrad and graduate student, I definitely felt like my best work was done under the gun. Like I felt for some reason, and I bought into this idea about that I did my best work under pressure. And I think that that also messed with my mind a lot because I tried to recreate that in artificial ways to put the pressure on me, which truly, I mean, I have a lot of GI issues that are stress related. So that stress was working against me and my body for many, many years. And so, but at the same time, I felt like it was a necessary evil to do my best work. And so it was really screwed up in my head. And I think I've learned a lot about accepting like who I am and how success isn't measured by, health issues you're having or, these different issues that, you have to cope with because you're trying to prove something. And I definitely think that I spent most of my life being a people pleaser. And I think the need for accomplishment was to please my parents and to prove something to myself, my family, that I was successful, whatever successful meant. And so, I mean, I think there's so much that is a part of that vicious cycle of what we as women find ourselves in because we, the us high functioning depressed people, we function differently and our depression might be, maybe expressed differently, but it doesn't mean that we don't have a host of issues that we need to work on. So I think that accepting, and that I think is really the story that Scarlett Johansson is saying is, that, you can't have it all. And that's okay. And accepting that is the first step to, maybe growing up, maybe being mature, maybe being realistic, maybe setting, tangible goals that we can all be successful in, and valuing ourselves because we don't have to be on that, vicious cycle of trying to do everything and be everything for everyone. So, I mean, I really think that's the spirit of the article. I don't think she's, being cynical in any way. I think she's just being honest and real about the challenges that we have as women and as people trying to, feed all the different sides of ourselves that, are meaningful to us. And that can be challenging to us as individuals, for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and I love that we kinda came full circle on that, because I think it's again, a great conversation and really a conversation starter for, for everybody who's listening in with us, week to week and kind of, going back to talking with your coworkers or talking with your friends or whomever, and kind of talking about, like, what does my work-life balance look like? Do I have that? Is it something that I need to kind of hone in on. You talked about burnout and different things like that. And so I think that there's a lot here. So I think we can probably round it out, Joji. I don't know if you have any other last thoughts. I hear the kids banging on the door. So I'm probably going to turn it over to you to close us out and then we'll go from there.
Sure, no problem. So I do think that it is important to round out by talking about, if burnout is something that you're struggling with or setting boundaries and work-life balance is something that is especially resonating with you right now. I think Elisa was really starting to talk about, and I think I've mentioned it too, sort of look at why are you struggling? Are there certain tasks that you're doing that you have a hard time setting boundaries on? And, are there other things going on? And is it that your personal life is spilling into your professional life or your professional life is spilling into your personal life? I do think that there are good techniques and strategies to help you find the balance, but you have to give it some attention and you need to figure out that it's not working for you. And I think that accepting the fact that you can't have it all is really the first step in the workaholic recovery program, which I seem to be the leader on. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that. And, as listeners, you all know that what we're talking about. Most of the women that I know that listen to this podcast are women who are really high achievers. And so take a minute for yourself. Think about how you like to relax and recharge. Whether, it could be a lot of things that we've talked about on this podcast. And we want to hear from you. What are things that you've discovered and learned along the way? And so, share with us as the, co-hosts, as well as other people who listen to this podcast, share with us what it is that you've done, you found successful. And, we are very eager to hear from our listeners. So please share, do a review, let us know you're out there. And, if you have ideas for topics, drop us a line and let us know what those are. So for Alyssa Marie and myself, signing off here today until we talk next time. Thank you for listening to our podcast, The Deconstructed Woman. If you liked this podcast, please share it with your friends, rate this episode, or subscribe to be notified of all new content. We want to hear from you, our listener. Do you have thoughts on the discussions we're having? Want to share topic suggestions? Or want to join us for a topic that you're passionate about? Contact us at our email address, thedeconstructedwoman@gmail.com.